Vincent Hale's hands shook as he stared at the gold-embossed envelope. Mr. Vincent Hale. No one had written his name like that in decades, like it belonged to someone important, someone who mattered. The retired janitor's heart stuttered painfully as he tore it open, the paper cutting his weathered finger. A single drop of blood stained the crisp, white card inside. 15 years ago, you saved my life with a pair of shoes. Tomorrow at noon, I'll show you how many lives you've actually changed. Vincent's knees gave out as he collapsed onto his porch steps. Across the street, behind construction barriers, something massive was rising where his neighbor's house once stood. Something that seemed to be watching him, waiting for him, something with his name on it. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heart's unsteady rhythm as panic clawed up his throat. For 40 years, he'd mopped school hallways before dawn, fixed broken lockers, and cleaned up spills without expecting thanks. He'd lived small, invisible by choice. Now, someone had found him. Someone remembered, and that terrified him more than anything. The jasmine Catherine had planted years ago released its sweet scent as darkness fell. But Vincent couldn't move from the porch steps. The envelope in his lap felt impossibly heavy, like it contained not just a card, but an entire future he'd never prepared for. A black sedan slowed as it passed his house, the driver studying him through tinted windows before accelerating away. Vincent watched it disappear around the corner, his mouth dry. They know where I live. They've been watching me. But why now? After all these years? Hello, I'm so glad you found this story. Stay with me. What happens next will leave you breathless. If you haven't subscribed, do it now. This journey isn't one you'll want to take alone. Where are you watching from today? Tell me in the comments. I love knowing who's with me as we discover what's hidden behind those construction barriers. Vincent had never been a man who asked for attention. When he retired 5 years ago, he'd slipped away as quietly as he'd worked. No party, no plaque, just a handshake from the principal and a box of old keychains he'd collected over the years. He told himself that's how he wanted it. That disappearing was a choice, not a wound. But sometimes, late at night, he'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if anyone remembered his name, if he'd mattered at all. And now this envelope, this message, this impossible thing being built across the street. He forced himself to stand, joints aching, and walked inside. His small house smelled of coffee and old wood, with photographs lining the narrow hallway. Him and Catherine on their wedding day, her smile bright as sunshine. Him shaking hands with a student who'd graduated 20 years ago. A group photo from the school's anniversary celebration. Faces he'd loved. Faces who'd moved on. Vincent sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mysterious card under the yellow light. 15 years ago, you saved my life with a pair of shoes. His mind raced through faces, names, moments, thousands of small kindnesses scattered across decades. Who had he given shoes to? There had been so many children with needs over the years, so many quiet interventions. Which one had found him? And what do they mean by how many lives you've actually changed? Vincent's gaze drifted to the window, where construction lights now illuminated the mysterious structure across the street. Workers moved in shadows behind the barriers, their voices carrying on the night air. Something was coming, something that would either prove he'd mattered or break what was left of his heart. Who had found Vincent after all these years? And what were they building with his name on it? Vincent Hale had always believed that kindness was meant to be quiet. His mother had taught him that, back when they'd lived in a cramped apartment above a laundromat, and she'd slipped dollar bills into neighbors' mailboxes when she knew they couldn't make rent. She never signed her name, never expected thanks. The best kind of good, she'd whispered to him once, is the kind nobody sees coming. He'd carried that with him through every year at Riverside Prep, a private academy where the children wore crisp uniforms and carried futures their parents had already bought. Vincent had been the janitor, the invisible hand that kept everything running, and he'd loved it, not for the work itself, but for the moments in between. The girl who'd cried in the stairwell after failing her audition. He'd sat with her, said nothing, just let her know she wasn't alone. The boy who'd struggled with reading and hid in the library during lunch. Vincent had quietly left vocabulary flashcards on his table and signed week after week. And then there was Aden. Vincent closed his eyes, leaning back in his chair as the memory unfolded like a pressed flower. Outside, the jasmine swayed in the breeze, and the scent curled through the kitchen window, sweet and persistent, the way memories could be. Aden Brennan, a scholarship kid, thin as a rail, with dark curls that fell into his eyes and a smile he saved for no one. He'd come to Riverside on merit alone, brilliant, determined, and desperately poor. Vincent had noticed him the first week of school, walking the halls in shoes that were 2 sizes too big, borrowed or donated, the soles flapping with every step. By winter, those shoes were held together with duct tape. Vincent had watched the boy try to hide it, watched him sit by his locker one frozen December morning, peeling the soaked canvas off his feet, his socks stained gray from the slush. Aden's shoulders had shaken, not from cold, but from the kind of shame that burrows deep. Vincent hadn't hesitated. He'd gone to the store that afternoon, bought a sturdy pair of sneakers, nothing flashy, just solid and warm. And the next morning, he'd sat down beside Aden and handed him the bag. The boy had looked at him like he'd just been given the world. "I can't. When someone helped me as a kid," Vincent had said softly, "they told me to pass it on. So one day, you'll do the same." Aden had hugged him so tightly Vincent thought his ribs might crack. And then, years later, Aden had graduated valedictorian and disappeared into a future Vincent could only imagine. He'd never heard from him again. Not a letter. Not a call. Vincent told himself that was how it should be, that the boy had moved on to bigger, better things. But sometimes he wondered if Aden even remembered the man who'd given him those shoes. Or if Vincent had been just another blurred face in the background of someone else's success story. Vincent opened his eyes, the kitchen dim now as dusk settled over the neighborhood. The construction site across the street had gone quiet, the workers gone home for the night, but the skeletal structure remained, looming, unfinished, waiting. He couldn't stand it anymore. He rose, joints stiff, and walked outside. The evening air was cool and sweet, jasmine heavy on the breeze. He crossed the street slowly, hands in his pockets, his heartbeat loud in his ears. He just wanted to see, to know. He approached the chain-link fence surrounding the site, peering through at the half-built structure. It was larger than he'd thought. 2 stories, wide porches, beautiful even in its unfinished state. "Excuse me, sir." Vincent turned. A young man in a neon safety vest stood a few feet away, polite but firm. "I'm sorry, but this is a restricted site. No visitors. Vincent gestured weakly. "I live across the street. I was curious what's being built." The young man's expression softened. He glanced back toward the building, then at Vincent, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or instructions he'd been given. "It's going to be something really special," he said carefully, "for the community. But I can't say more than that right now." "Why not?" "Because," the man hesitated, then smiled. "Because some surprises are worth waiting for." He said it kindly, gently, but it still felt like a door closing. Vincent nodded, stepping back. "All right, thank you." He walked home slowly, the exclusion settling deeper. Even here, on his own street, in his own neighborhood, he was being kept outside, like he didn't belong to whatever was happening. That night, Vincent lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Catherine's side of the bed was still made, untouched, the way it had been for 3 years. He'd never been able to bring himself to sleep in the middle. Through the open window, Jasmine drifted in, and he thought of her, of the garden they'd planted together, of all the small kindnesses they'd shared when no one was watching. He thought about Aden. He thought about all the students he'd helped over the years. Small gestures, forgotten moments, the kind of kindness that dissolved into the past like sugar and water. He'd never wanted credit, Never needed it. But lying here now, in the dark, with that strange structure growing across the street and his neighbors guarding secrets he wasn't allowed to know, Vincent felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. The kind that could break a man if he let himself believe in it. The kind that whispered, maybe you weren't forgotten after all. What was everyone hiding? And why did it feel like the past was about to come knocking? Vincent couldn't sleep. As dawn broke, he found himself back on the porch, staring at the mysterious card in his trembling hands. Tomorrow at noon. Today. He showered, shaved with extra care, put on his best shirt, the blue one Catherine had bought him for their last anniversary. It hung looser now, but he smoothed it carefully, fingers lingering on the collar she'd once adjusted for him. What would you tell me to do, Catherine? The jasmine nodded in the morning breeze, as if she were answering. At precisely 11:45, Vincent stepped outside. The construction site had gone eerily quiet. The barriers remained, but no workers bustled about. No equipment hummed. Just silence, thick, expectant, like the moment before an orchestra begins. His neighbors were emerging from their homes, glancing his way with secret smiles before walking toward the site. Rose Whitmore waved from her garden, eyes already glistening. Old Mr. Kowalski gave him a thumbs up from his driveway. Vincent's stomach twisted. They all know. Whatever was happening, the entire neighborhood had been in on it. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and crossed the street. A small crowd had gathered at the entrance to the site. As Vincent approached, they parted silently, creating a path for him. Heart hammering, he walked forward, through the gap in the construction barriers, and stopped dead. The building was finished. Completely, beautifully finished. A two-story structure of warm brick and wide windows, wraparound porches, gardens planted along walkways, gardens filled with jasmine, their white blooms bright against the green. Benches lined the front, and a small playground gleamed in the sunlight. But it was the sign above the double doors that stole Vincent's breath. Golden letters, carved deep. The Hale House. For the ones who just need a little help. Vincent's knees nearly gave out. No, this can't be real. Mr. Hale? He turned, vision blurred. A man stood a few feet away, tall, lean, in a charcoal suit that seemed tailored to his exact measurements. His dark curls were shorter now, threaded with silver at the temples, but his eyes. Vincent knew those eyes. Warm, serious, grateful, alive with everything he'd once been too afraid to hope for. Aden, Vincent whispered, his voice breaking. Aden. Brennan smiled, and it was the same smile he'd hidden as a boy, the one he saved for people who deserved it. It's been a long time, Aden said, his voice rough with emotion. Vincent couldn't speak, couldn't move. He just stood there, staring at the man who'd once been a scared kid with broken shoes, now standing in front of a building that bore Vincent's name. I don't deserve this. But Aden stepped closer, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders slightly hunched the way they used to be when he was trying not to cry. You told me to pass it on, Aden said quietly. So I did. He gestured toward the building, the Hale House, and Vincent finally understood. This wasn't just a community center. It was a legacy. His legacy, built by the boy he'd helped all those years ago. I don't. Vincent's voice cracked. Tears spilled over, hot and unbidden. I don't understand. I just gave you shoes. That's all. Just shoes. Aden's own eyes glistened. You gave me more than that. You gave me dignity. You made me believe I was worth something. His voice dropped to a whisper. And I never forgot. Vincent's chest heaved. All the years of invisible work, of quiet kindness, of wondering if any of it had mattered. It had. Aden extended his hand, but then changed his mind and pulled Vincent into a fierce hug instead. And Vincent, who hadn't been held like this since Catherine died, let himself break, let himself believe. Come on, Aden said, pulling back and wiping his eyes. There are people inside who want to meet you. He extended his hand, and Vincent, heart hammering, took it. What did Aden build inside? And who was waiting? The crowd inside the Hale house stole Vincent's breath. Dozens of faces turned toward him as he entered, some familiar from Riverside Prep, grown older but unmistakable. Others were strangers, watching him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "What is this?" Vincent whispered, his voice strangled. "What have you done, Aden?" Aden smiled, his eyes never leaving Vincent's face. "I built a place for kids like I used to be. The Hale House will provide after-school programs, tutoring, meals, clothing, anything children need to succeed that their families can't give them." Before Vincent could respond, a woman approached, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked hair. Dr. Solomon. Vincent recognized the former principal of Riverside Prep. "I didn't expect." Vincent Hale. She took his hands in hers. "Did you really think we'd forgotten you? The heart and soul of our school for 40 years. Heat crept up Vincent's neck. "I just did my job. Your job was to mop floors. Everything else," she waved toward the crowd. "All the lives you touched, all the quiet kindnesses no one was supposed to notice, that was never in your job description. That was you." Aden guided him through the space, pointing out features with pride. The computer lab, the kitchen for cooking classes, the art studio, the small library. As they climbed to the second floor, Vincent noticed a woman in a gray suit watching from the corner. The same elegant woman he'd seen at the construction site. "That's Diana Reynolds," Aden explained quietly. "She's on the board of Riverbank Investment Group. They committed $5 million to get us started and another $5 if we meet benchmarks." Vincent nearly missed a step. $10 million? "Your name carries weight, Mr. Hale." Aden's voice held something like reverence. "More than you know." Upstairs, Aden led him to a large corner office. Inside, framed photographs lined the walls, dozens of images of Vincent throughout his years at Riverside Prep. Vincent with a young girl who'd sprained her ankle, carrying her to the nurse's office. Vincent helping a boy with his science project after a beaker broke. Vincent on a ladder, hanging decorations while students passed beneath. "How did you get these?" he asked, barely audible. "I asked. People saved them. People remembered." Aden stood beside him. "This will be your office." Vincent turned sharply. "My what?" "Your office. We need a director of student outreach. Someone who understands what it means to help without making kids feel like charity cases." The room seemed to tilt. "Aden, I can't. I'm not. Educated enough? Connected enough? Young enough?" Aden shook his head. "What matters is what you know about kindness. About dignity." The door opened, and Diana Reynolds entered. Her professional smile didn't reach her eyes. "Aden, I need a word." She glanced at Vincent. "In private." They stepped outside, but Vincent could hear their voices rising, tension in every syllable. "Last-minute demands," Diana was saying. "They've added conditions." "We had an agreement," Aden replied, his voice tight. "Well, now they want a different name on the building." Vincent froze. "That's not happening." Aden's tone brooked no argument. "Aden, be reasonable. $5 million is at stake. They want someone with credentials, with connections. Then let them pull out completely." Vincent's chest constricted. $5 million. Gone. Because of him. Because Aden insisted on honoring a janitor who'd given a child a pair of shoes 15 years ago. "I'm not worth this." Vincent made a decision. He opened the door, interrupting their argument. "I heard," he said simply, "and I won't let you do this. Not for me." Aden's jaw set. "This isn't your decision." "It should be." Vincent straightened his shoulders. "If keeping my name on this building means losing the money that could help children, then change it." Silence fell between them. Then Aden smiled, slow, secretive, proud. "There he is," he said softly. "There's the man I've been telling everyone about." He turned to Diana. "Tell them we're keeping the name. And if they pull funding, I'll match it dollar for dollar." Vincent gasped. "Aden, you can't." "I can." Aden's eyes never left Diana's. "I've been saving for this my whole life." As Diana walked away, Vincent stared at Aden, bewildered. "Why risk everything like that?" "For me." Aden's expression softened. Because 15 years ago, you taught me that real help means giving people dignity, not just things. Vincent felt something shift inside him, a tectonic movement of understanding. For decades, he thought his invisibility was his weakness. But maybe it had been his strength all along. There's something else, Aden said, his voice dropping. Something I haven't told you yet. The hair on Vincent's arms rose. What is it? Aden's phone buzzed before he could answer. He checked it, his expression clearing. They're ready for us downstairs. The dedication ceremony is about to begin. Vincent followed him back toward the stairs, his heart hammering. Something was still hidden. Something important. What secret was Aden still keeping? And who was waiting at the dedication ceremony? The crowd had doubled when Vincent returned downstairs. Faces turned toward him as he descended, expectant, emotional, some openly weeping. A podium had been set up in the center of the main hall, microphone gleaming in the afternoon light. Chairs arranged in neat rows were filled with people of all ages, while others stood along the walls, clutching programs. Vincent faltered on the last step. So many people. Aden guided him gently toward the front row, where a single empty chair waited. As they walked, hands reached out to touch Vincent's arm, his shoulder, brief connections filled with gratitude he couldn't comprehend. What is happening? Vincent whispered, panic rising. Who are all these people? Aden's smile was gentle. They're here for you. Before Vincent could demand a real answer, Aden squeezed a shoulder and walked to the podium. The room hushed immediately. Welcome to the Hale house, Aden began, his voice resonant with emotion. Some of you have traveled across the country to be here today. Others just walked down the street. But all of you are here because of one man. He looked directly at Vincent. 15 years ago, I was a scholarship student at Riverside Prep. I didn't have money for lunch, let alone proper clothes. My shoes, his voice caught. My shoes were falling apart. I tried to hide it, tried to pretend I was like everyone else. But I wasn't. The crowd was utterly silent. One morning, after walking through slush to school, I sat by my locker, trying not to cry because my feet were wet, cold, and everyone would see. That's when Mr. Hale sat down beside me and changed my life. Vincent's chest tightened, remembering. He gave me new shoes. Just like that. No big speech. No making me feel like a charity case. He just told me that someone had once helped him, and someday I should pass it on to someone else. Aden's eyes glistened. What Mr. Hale didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that his simple act of kindness didn't just help one student. He gestured to a woman in the third row, mid-30s, elegant, with kind eyes. Grace Chun, please stand. She rose, smiling at Vincent through tears. During college, Aden continued, I noticed Grace working 3 jobs while studying pre-med. Her textbooks were second-hand, falling apart. So I bought her new ones, anonymously. I left them outside her door with a note that said, pass it on. Vincent's breath caught. Dr. Chun is now the head of pediatric oncology at Memorial Hospital, Aden said, pride evident. And she's established a scholarship fund for underprivileged students entering medical school. Grace nodded at Vincent, eyes filled with gratitude. James Torres, a man stood, tall, broad-shouldered, with a military bearing. When James was starting his tech company and couldn't make rent, Grace gave him 3 months free in her spare room while he built his prototype. He now employs over 200 people, many hired from underprivileged communities. James wiped his eyes, nodding at Vincent. One by one, Aden called names. People stood. Stories unfolded. A chain reaction of kindness spanning 15 years and countless lives. Each person had received help from someone in the room, and each had gone on to help others. All because Vincent had given a boy a pair of shoes. Vincent couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This can't be real. Aden's voice softened. This is the Hale chain, as we call it. Over 500 lives directly impacted. Thousands more indirectly. And it all started with a janitor who thought no one was watching. The room erupted in applause, thunderous, overwhelming. And that's when Vincent saw them, tucked against the back wall. 5 elderly men and women, each wearing the distinctive blue uniforms of Riverside Prep's janitorial staff. The sight of them broke something in Vincent's chest, a dam he'd built decades ago. Aden's voice cut through the noise. But there's something Mr. Hale still doesn't know. The room quieted. The Hale House isn't just a community center. It's the 15th such center we've opened across the country. Vincent's head snapped up. From New York to Los Angeles, the Hale chain has established resource centers for underprivileged youth, each one named for Vincent Hale, each one following his principle: help with dignity, not pity. And pass it on. Aden looked directly at Vincent, his expression both apologetic and fiercely proud. I've been watching your career for 15 years, Mr. Hale, documenting every student you helped, every life you touched, building this network in your honor, without your knowledge or permission. The betrayal Vincent felt was strange, warm, disorienting. 15 centers, bearing his name, without him knowing. I wanted to tell you, Aden continued. But every time I came close, he faltered. I was afraid you'd tell me to stop, that you wouldn't want the attention. The truth of it landed hard. Vincent would have stopped him, would have insisted his name be removed, would have remained invisible. Diana Reynolds stepped to the microphone. The Riverbank Investment Group is proud to announce our continued support of the Hale Initiative with a $20 million endowment to ensure these centers continue changing lives for generations to come. The crowd gasped, applauded, stood, but Vincent couldn't move. 20 million. His name. 15 centers. 500 lives. All because of shoes. The problem is, Aden said, quieter now, we need someone to lead this organization. Someone who embodies its principles. Someone who understands that true kindness doesn't seek recognition. He extended his hand toward Vincent. Mr. Hale, will you help us change the world? One small kindness at a time. Every eye turned to Vincent, waiting, hoping. But Vincent couldn't speak, couldn't rise. Because for the first time in his 70 years, Vincent Hale realized a terrible, beautiful truth. He'd never been invisible at all. Would Vincent accept this impossible challenge? Or would the weight of such responsibility be too much to bear? Vincent couldn't sleep that night. He sat on his porch, watching the silhouette of the Hale house across the street, its windows dark now. The scent of jasmine wrapped around him like a question. How do you become the person everyone believes you are? He hadn't given Aden an answer. He'd asked for time. The phone Aden had given him, sleek, expensive, buzzed on the table beside him. The board wants to meet tomorrow. They need your answer by noon. Aden. Vincent set the phone down, his stomach churning. The board. Wealthy, educated people who'd expect him to speak their language, understand their world. He was 70 years old, a widower with an 8th grade education. I can't do this. I'm going to fail. I'm going to let them all down. His chest tightened, a familiar pressure building. The doctor had warned him after his mild heart attack last year. Stress is your enemy now. And what could be more stressful than this? Dawn found him still on the porch, stiff and cold. He showered, dressed in the new suit Aden had sent over. Italian wool, perfectly tailored. It felt like a costume, a pretense. Inside the Hale house, Diana Reynolds and 3 older men in expensive suits waited. Board members, Vincent assumed. Their conversation stopped when he entered, all eyes turning to him with expectation. Diana began presenting, her voice confident as she outlined expansion plans, funding strategies. Words washed over Vincent in a tide of corporate language he barely understood. Scalable models. Strategic partnerships. Brand alignment. What do you think, Mr. Hale? Diana finally turned to him. How would you approach the Chicago expansion? 5 pairs of eyes fixed on him, waiting. Vincent opened his mouth, closed it. Panic clawed at his chest. Excuse me, he managed, rising unsteadily. I need air. He stumbled outside into the small garden where jasmine had been planted. The morning sun felt too bright, the world too sharp. Vincent sank onto a bench, hands pressed to his knees, gulping air. I can't do this. I was never meant for this. Footsteps approached, and Vincent looked up to find Aden standing over him, concern etched on his face. Mr. Hale. Stop. Vincent's voice broke. Stop calling me that. Stop treating me like I'm someone important. I'm a janitor, Aden. Just a janitor. Aden sat beside him, silent for a long moment. You're right, he finally said. I've been unfair to you. Vincent glanced up, surprised. I built all this without asking. Put your name on buildings. Created an organization you never agreed to lead. Aden stared at his hands. I was so focused on honoring you that I never considered you might not want this. I'll tell the board you declined. Aden continued quietly. We'll find someone else. Someone qualified. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they hollowed Vincent out, left him empty. The truth is, Aden said, rising, I was being selfish. I wanted to repay a debt, to show everyone what you taught me. He smiled sadly. But you never asked for repayment, did you? You just wanted me to pass it on. He extended his hand. I'm sorry, Mr. Hale, for all of this. Vincent didn't take it. Couldn't. Because in that moment, with freedom within reach, he realized what terrified him most wasn't the responsibility. It was the possibility that Aden had been wrong about him all along, that there was nothing special inside him, nothing worth passing on. Had Vincent's lifetime of quiet kindness been a lie? Or was there something within him stronger than his fears? Vincent watched Aden walk away, shoulders heavy with disappointment. This is for the best, Vincent told himself, trying to ignore the hollow feeling spreading through his chest. They need someone educated, someone who understands their world. The garden around him was quiet save for the distant sounds of traffic and birds calling to each other across the morning sky. The jasmine nodded in the gentle breeze, releasing its sweet scent, Catherine's scent. Vincent closed his eyes, suddenly exhausted. Excuse me, Mr. Hale? The voice was timid, uncertain. Vincent looked up to find a young woman standing at the garden entrance, no more than 17, wearing jeans with carefully mended knees and a second-hand blouse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes held a wariness Vincent recognized immediately. The wariness of someone who expected to be dismissed. Yes, he said gently. She twisted her hands together. I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to thank you. Vincent frowned slightly. Thank me? I don't think we've met. We haven't. She took a hesitant step closer. My name is Sophia. Sophia Torres. James Torres is my dad. James Torres, the man who had stood during the ceremony. One of the links in the Hale chain. He told me about you, Sophia continued. About what you did for Aden, and what Aden did for Dr. Chun, and what she did for my dad. Her voice grew stronger. If that hadn't happened, my family wouldn't have had anything. We were homeless before Dad's company took off. Vincent's chest tightened. I know. You didn't know. She smiled slightly. That's what makes it special. She sat beside him on the bench, looking at her worn sneakers. I overheard what you told Mr. Brennan just now, about being just a janitor. Heat crept up Vincent's neck. I didn't mean... My mom was a janitor, Sophia interrupted, her eyes lifting to meet his. At my elementary school. She worked nights, so she could be home when I got back from school. The other kids used to make fun of me for it. Vincent nodded, understanding all too well. But then one day, our classroom flooded, a pipe burst during lunch. Everything was ruined. Our projects, our books, everything. We were all crying. Sophia's eyes grew distant with the memory. And then my mom came in. She didn't say anything. She just fixed it. Vincent waited, sensing there was more. She organized all the other custodians. They worked through the night, drying books, salvaging what they could, finding replacement supplies. By morning, our classroom was better than before. Sophia smiled. After that, no one made fun of me anymore. because they saw what I already knew, that janitors are the ones who make broken things whole again. Something shifted in Vincent's chest. Not the painful pressure of fear, but a warmth he'd almost forgotten. I've never met any of the board members in there, Sophia said, gesturing toward the building. But I guarantee you, none of them know what it's like to need help and be too ashamed to ask for it. None of them understand what it means when someone helps you without making you feel small for needing it. She reached in her pocket and pulled out something small and dark. My dad told me to give you this. He said you'd understand. She pressed it into Vincent's palm. A single shoe, crafted from polished obsidian, small enough to fit in his hand. A paperweight, perhaps, or a desk ornament. It's the symbol of the Hale chain, Sophia explained. Every member receives one when they help someone else, to remind them where it all started. Vincent stared at it, emotion rising in his throat. There are thousands of these now, she said quietly. All because you saw a boy who needed shoes. The obsidian caught the morning light, gleaming dark and beautiful. Do you know what I'm going to be when I finish college? Sophia asked. Vincent looked up at her, this child of the Hale chain. A teacher, she said, her face brightening. And not at some fancy private school. I'm going to teach where kids need me most. Where they need someone to see them when they feel invisible. She stood, brushing off her jeans. That's what you did, Mr. Hale. You saw people, even when no one saw you. She smiled once more, then turned to leave. Sophia, Vincent called after her. She paused, looking back. Thank you, he said simply. After she left, Vincent sat alone in the garden, the obsidian shoe heavy in his palm. He thought about Catherine, about what she would say if she could see him now, about what his mother would say. The best kind of good is the kind nobody sees coming. He turned the shoe over in his hands, remembering Aden's face when he'd handed him that bag 15 years ago. The disbelief, the gratitude, the way the boy had straightened his shoulders afterward, walking with new dignity. Vincent had never wanted recognition. But what if recognition wasn't the point? What if the point was that the world needed more people who understood what it meant to be unseen? What it meant to help without humiliating? What it meant to clean up messes others pretended not to notice? He rose, the obsidian shoe clutched in his hand like a talisman. And for the first time since he'd entered the Hale house, Vincent felt the tight band around his chest loosen. Maybe it wasn't about being qualified. Maybe it was about being necessary. Would Vincent find the courage to accept his legacy? And what would happen when he faced the board again? The boardroom fell silent when Vincent returned. He stood in the doorway, the obsidian shoe clutched in his palm, his heart steady for the first time since he'd crossed the threshold of the Hale house. Aden sat at the far end of the table, surprise flickering across his face. Diana and the board members had been in the midst of a heated discussion, papers scattered across the mahogany surface. Vincent cleared his throat. I'd like to finish our meeting, he said quietly. The room stilled. Aden rose halfway from his chair, hope and uncertainty battling in his expression. Mr. Hale, Diana began carefully. Aden informed us of your decision. We understand completely, and we're already discussing potential candidates who... I haven't made my decision yet. Vincent's voice was stronger than he expected. I believe I was asked about the Chicago expansion. He walked to the head of the table, not tentatively, as before, but with the measured pace of a man who'd spent 40 years moving through hallways filled with rushing students without ever colliding with them. He set the obsidian shoe on the table before him, its polished surface catching the light. Before I answer, he continued, I'd like to ask each of you a question. The board members exchanged glances. Diana's professional smile wavered slightly. When was the last time any of you cleaned your own home? The question hung in the air, so unexpected that no one spoke. I don't mean straightening up, Vincent clarified. I mean getting on your hands and knees to scrub a floor, picking up someone else's trash, cleaning a bathroom that isn't yours. The oldest board member, a silver-haired man with an expensive watch, frowned slightly. I'm not sure I understand the relevance. I do, Aden said, his eyes never leaving Vincent's face. When you clean, Vincent continued, you see things others don't. The broken hinges, the leaky pipes, the worn carpet that might trip someone. You see what needs fixing before it breaks completely. He looked each board member in the eye. For 40 years, I cleaned a school. I saw which students arrived early because home was cold, which ones lingered after hours because they had nowhere safe to go, which ones saved half their lunch for later because dinner wasn't guaranteed. Vincent picked up the strategic plan from the table, flipping through its glossy pages of charts and projections. This is very impressive, he said honestly, but it's missing something fundamental. Diana sat straighter. We've included detailed metrics for success, comprehensive. That's not what I mean, Vincent interrupted gently. I'm talking about the why. Why do these centers exist? What makes them different from any other charity? He set the plan down and picked up the obsidian shoe instead. The reason the Hale chain works isn't because of money or buildings or programs. It's because of dignity. His voice grew stronger, more certain. Every person who received help was seen as valuable, not as a problem to be solved or a statistic to be improved. The youngest board member leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Mr. Hale? I'm suggesting we focus first on the people we serve, not the metrics we track. Vincent gestured toward the window where children were playing in the neighborhood beyond. A janitor doesn't get praise for how many rooms he cleans. He's successful when people don't notice his work at all, when they can just live and learn and clean safe spaces without thinking about who made it possible. Understanding dawned in Aden's eyes. You're saying our success shouldn't be measured by recognition. Exactly. Vincent nodded. Our success is when the children we help don't feel like charity cases, when they receive what they need with their dignity intact. The silver-haired board member, whose nameplate read Harrison Reynolds, removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. That's all very touching, Mr. Hale, but sentiment doesn't secure funding. Donors want concrete results. Numbers. Growth. Vincent smiled slightly. You're Diana's father, aren't you? Harrison blinked, surprised. Yes. And you donated the initial $5 million. I did. Why? Harrison frowned. I beg your pardon? Why did you donate? Vincent repeated. There are thousands of charities. Why this one? Harrison glanced at his daughter, then at Aden. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes. Because, he admitted slowly, 30 years ago, someone helped me when I needed it most. No questions asked. No recognition sought. The room grew very still. Who? Vincent asked quietly. Harrison's gaze dropped to the obsidian shoe. My college roommate's father, a janitor at an elementary school in Philadelphia. He swallowed hard. He paid my tuition when my scholarship fell through. Anonymously. I only found out years later, after I'd made my first $1 million. Vincent nodded, understanding blooming. That's why you're here, he said softly. Not because of metrics or tax benefits, but because someone once showed you kindness without asking for anything in return. Harrison's eyes glistened. Mr. Reynolds, Vincent continued, all your wealth and success didn't erase the memory of that kindness. That's the power we're trying to harness here. Not spreadsheets, not buildings, just the simple, transformative power of being seen when you feel invisible. Silence filled the room. Then Aden stood, his expression radiant with pride and relief. This is why it has to be you, Mr. Hale, he said. This is what I could never explain to the board. This wisdom doesn't come from degrees or business experience. It comes from 40 years of quiet service. Diana looked from Vincent to her father, then back again. The Chicago expansion, she said carefully. What would your approach be? Vincent smiled, a real smile, confident and clear. First, we find the janitors. How would Vincent transform the Hale Initiative? And what would his legacy truly become? 1 year later, Vincent stood at the window of his office, watching children arrive for the after-school program at the Hale house. Their laughter carried through the glass, bright, uninhibited, the sound of freedom. Behind him, the obsidian shoe sat on his desk, alongside dozens of letters from children and families whose lives have been touched by the Hale Initiative. Photographs lined the walls, not just of Vincent now, but of the janitors, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff they'd hired to mentor children at centers across the country. The Chicago location had opened 3 months ago. Detroit would follow next quarter. 23 Hale houses in total, with plans for 30 by year's end. All of them guided by a simple principle: help with dignity, not pity. And pass it on. A knock sounded at his door. "Come in," Vincent called, turning from the window. Aden entered, looking tired but content. The past year had been grueling. Fundraising trips, media interviews, endless meetings. But the sparkle hadn't left his eyes. The Reynolds Foundation just confirmed, he announced, grinning. They're funding the scholarship program. Full ride for 50 students this fall. Vincent nodded, a smile spreading across his face. Harrison came through. He did better than that. Aden handed him a folder. He's transferring control of his entire charitable trust to the Hale Initiative. $300 million. Vincent sat slowly in his chair. Numbers like that still stunned him. "There's a condition," Aden added, his expression turning serious. "He wants us to expand internationally, starting with Mexico and moving into Central America." Vincent's hand went instinctively to the obsidian shoe. "We'll need partners who understand those communities. People with roots there. Already on it." Aden sat across from him, studying Vincent's face. "You don't seem surprised." Vincent smiled. "I'm learning not to be surprised by kindness. Once people feel it, truly feel it, they can't help but spread it." Through the open window, the scent of jasmine drifted in, planted around every Hale house now, Vincent's quiet tribute to Catherine. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing it in. "I have something for you," Aden said, reaching into his jacket. He withdrew a small envelope and handed it across the desk. Vincent opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph, creased, faded, at least 40 years old. It showed a janitor at Riverside Prep, young and lean, kneeling beside a small girl with a scraped knee. The janitor was dabbing at the wound with such gentleness, such focus, that he was unaware of the camera. Vincent stared at his younger self, emotion rising in his throat. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "The girl in the photo sent it," Aden explained. "Her name is Margaret Whitley now. She's a grandmother of 4, living in Oregon." He leaned forward. "She said that day changed her life. That you were the first adult who ever treated her hurt like it mattered." Vincent traced the edge of the photograph with a weathered finger. He had no memory of this moment, one of thousands of small kindnesses scattered through his years at the school. "She became a nurse," Aden continued, "inspired by, and I quote, a janitor who cleaned up my tears as carefully as he cleaned the hallways." Vincent's vision blurred. "There are so many more, Vincent. So many lives you touched without knowing." Vincent carefully tucked the photo back into its envelope. "That was never the point, though, was it? The knowing." Aden smiled. "No, it wasn't." They sat in companionable silence, watching the children play in the yard below. "I've been thinking," Vincent said finally, "about the Foundation's future." Aden raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I'm 71 years old, Aden. I can't do this forever. If you're worried about retirement." Vincent held up a hand. "I'm not retiring. Not yet." He smiled. "But I want to start training my replacement." Aden leaned back, surprised. "Who?" Vincent nodded toward the window. "Sophia Torres. James's daughter? She's only 18. She starts college next month. Education major." Vincent's eyes crinkled. "In 4 years, she'll be ready to begin learning the real work." Understanding dawned on Aden's face. "You're planning decades ahead. The Hale change should outlive us both," Vincent said simply. And who better to lead it than someone who's felt its impact from childhood? Aden nodded slowly, then smiled. Catherine will be proud of you. Vincent's heart swelled at the mention of her name. She always told me my problem was thinking I was too small for the world. And now, Vincent gestured to the maps on his wall, the pins marking each Hale house location, the thousands of lives touched. Now I know the truth, he said quietly. None of us is small. We just need someone to see our size. Outside, in the garden, jasmine bloomed in the summer heat, persistent, sweet, eternal. Just like kindness passed from one hand to another. Just like legacy. Just like love. Thank you for staying till this moment. Remember that the smallest kindnesses can create the largest ripples. Have you been part of a chain of goodness? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe and join our ducal family. Together, we'll find beauty in the ordinary and magic in the everyday.